During this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the guiding principles of the practice search within Wolf. First thing I want to do is just start by building a search for you that incorporates a few different parameters. And so this one in particular, I'm just going to start building it for you and just talk it through with you. So this one is going to be diabetes, no hemoglobin A1C in greater than 6 months. Okay, so we're going to name that search. Don't forget to select search all patients. Now, all of our patients could be between any age, so we're going to leave that just as it is. I'm going to select the primary MD, being Dr. McCaffrey. Then I'm also going to go under history, and I'm going to select everybody who has diabetes in their problem list. And I'm just going to select 250 here. And then the last thing I also want to check is the lab results. We're going to add that other filter here. So we can just type in A1C and that'll bring us to the drop-down menu where that lab will pop up nicely for us there. I'm going to uncheck this and say observed within the last 6 months. And don't forget, we want to look for people who have not had this observed in the last 6 months. Anytime we say not, we want to check off that exclude matches. Okay, so when you're doing a search like this, now first of all, this is going to give you fantastic information, but there's a few things to be aware of when you're doing these searches. One is that you want to have a really good sense about how the data is recorded by the people in the clinic. So for example, if you are doing a search like this, you are going to be pulling out of the EMR everybody who has a diabetes diagnosis in their problem list. However, if maybe you have 5 physicians in your clinic and only one of them is sort of consistently putting that information in, then it is very likely that you're not going to be able to search the patients who have diabetes in the other physicians' panels. So knowing how that information gets entered is really, really critical. Also knowing that it's standardized as much as possible. This is also really critical. If you do not standardize the information, then you generally have to account for all the possible variations of how things get entered. And that can be quite a time-intensive and time-consuming work. Another thing is that you want to take your search when you're building it, and you really kind of want to build it one thing at a time. So we already know we're sort of grabbing everybody within the panel, but specifically now we're getting to all the patients here who are assigned to Dr. McCaffrey. And then we're going to add one more filter that is all assigned to Dr. McCaffrey and as well are diabetic. Okay, so we're refining our search one parameter at a time. Okay, the other thing that we want to do is be able to validate as you're adding all this information in. So for example, if I had started building this search and I decided to run my search right at this point right here where I've selected all the patients assigned to Dr. McCaffrey. If I went to search that and for some reason on my list it popped up with a bunch of other patients and they're assigned to another doctor, that might be just a flag to me that there might be some cleanup that needs to happen there, or it's not capturing it correctly in some way, in which case it needs to be fixed. Once you've corrected each parameter, search it and then add another filter. And then once you've added all the diabetes, once you've added the filter for diabetes and then you've searched it again, just go into that list and check each patient's chart and make sure that yes, those people actually do have diabetes in their problem list. Or maybe some of these people could have possibly do have diabetes, but it's actually not in the problem list. So just knowing that some of those patients won't come up if they haven't got that information entered. Another thing you can do is play around with your searches and flip your logic around. So for example, maybe you are doing a search to identify all patients that have had a mammogram in the past 2 years. If you go to search for that and you happen to pull up the list, like we generally want to know the patients who have not had a mammogram in the last 2 years. But if I flip around the logic, there's sometimes I can get great information out of that. So if I do a list that says, give me a list of all my patients who have had a mammogram in the last 2 years, and then I go and pull the search, I might actually see that there's some men that come up on that list, in which case there's some cleanup that might need to happen in terms of the gender in the demographic screen. Also, when you do any kind of search, you want to verify that this information is actually correct. And how you can do that is, and I'm going to go ahead and run this search here right now. So I'm going to click on that. And it's giving me a list of 6 patients who are diabetic, belonging to Dr. McCaffrey, who have not had an A1C done in greater than 6 months. So what I can do is I can just double click into that person's chart. And if I really want to make sure that this information is correct, I'll likely want to go into investigations and see when the last hemoglobin A1C was done. And here it says April of 2006, which was more than 10 years ago. So in fact, our search is correct. So those are some of the fundamentals of doing a practice search in Wolf.